Welcome to Talk Legal, Special Edition, brought to you by the Young Lawyers section of the Chicago Bar Association, featuring Chastity Burns, Marty Gold, Kenny Matuszewski, and Jeff Moskowitz, the chair of the Young Lawyers section. Welcome to a special edition of Talk Legal, a production of the Young Lawyers section and the Racial Justice Coalition. In honor of Black History Month, our program will be highlighting African American bar associations in our area. Today, we will be featuring the president of the National Bar Association, C.K. Hoffler. Today's hosts are the esteemed Marty Gold and myself, Jeff Moskowitz.
You have an extremely impressive resume, holding some of the largest verdicts in medical malpractice cases in Virginia and Georgia, a $139 million recovery in a breach of contract case against Anheuser-Busch, and some of the other largest verdicts and settlements in plaintiffs' personal injury cases. And I think our viewers would love to know, how did you become a lawyer in the first place?
Well, first of all, thank you, Marty and Jeff, for having me on this program. I'm delighted to be here. Love Chicago and love what you all do. And I remember a time when I was considered part of the Young Lawyers group, any Young Lawyers group. And of course, now as things progress, you move to a different stage in your legal career. But I started off when I was younger, I always had a spirit of advocacy. And I had an older brother who was a lawyer. And so it wasn't that I was new or it was a different concept for me to think about a profession in the law. But when I was in 10th grade, I thought that I should have some experiences working for a law firm. So I worked for a law firm one summer along with a couple other jobs. I clerked at a firm, I guess that's what it would be called now, when I was in 10th grade. And I thought, this is interesting. And then when I was in college at Smith College, we had I think it was the fall semester, we could take, or after the Christmas break, we could work for 3 weeks, or we could just go skiing, or we could just do nothing. And I chose to work at a law firm in Buffalo, which is where I'm from originally. And that's really when it occurred to me that I might have a calling to be an advocate, a real advocate, on behalf of people who had no voice. I worked for a small firm called Hargrave and McKelvey in Buffalo, New York. And that really sparked a spirit for me of being an advocate on behalf of people who had no voice and who really didn't have many options. And so that's where it really started in college. And from there, I applied and went to Georgetown Law School. But very interestingly, when I was in law school, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to actually practice law technically. I think what I'll do is maybe work at the UN or have an international career because I had lived and worked previously internationally. And that may be the best form of advocacy for me. And somewhere along the way, I started working for Finley Cumble at a law firm and was able to do international work. And then the rest is history.
TK, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the National Bar Association? And I don't know if the viewers know yet, but you're the president of the National Bar Association now. So I think we're all interested in learning how you first got involved and then how you kind of moved up the organization to the role that you have now.
Absolutely. When I was in law school, the dean at Georgetown Law School was a gentleman by the name of Dave Wilmot. He's a legend in Washington, D.C. And Dave Wilmot met with a group of students and he said, you all need to be involved in the National Bar Association. And so we then learned as young students in law school about the National Bar Association. And shortly thereafter, one of my colleagues said, well, my brother went to law school and is really good friends with the executive director of the National Bar Association, and our offices are in DC. So we met with John Crump, who was the then executive director of the National Bar Association. And John Crump basically indoctrinated us on the importance of being a member of this organization that hails, Thurgood Marshall, Constance Baker Motley, and so many other legends, Willie Gary, Johnny Cochran, all of these extraordinary African-American lawyers and judges and jurists and law professors that we really didn't even know about. And so I was persuaded at that time that I had no choice, that of course I was going to be a member of the National Bar Association. And as a student, I joined the National Bar Association because they've always had a program for students. And so that began my journey, and that was 34. That was in 1985. You all weren't even born in 1985 if you're part of the Young Lawyers Division. And that is just, I don't even know what to say about that. But that's how seasoned I am. I don't speak in age because I tell people I'm in my 30s. But 1985 was the first time I was introduced to the National Bar Association. And, but I always felt that it was a bar association that was home for me, a place where people like me, people who were like-minded, who had experienced some of the trials and tribulations that oftentimes lawyers of color, African American lawyers do experience. And there was such a richness in the membership and the programs. I remember being blown away by just having unfettered access to some of the giants in the industry, be they judges, lawyers, and I became a believer. The National Bar Association is the focal point of my bar career and always has been, even when I had a robust international practice. And when that was the focus of my career, I still was a member of the National Bar Association. So serving as its president, and I believe the 14th woman in its almost 100-year history to be president, it was very special to me. It's such an honor. And it's a labor of love. And I decided to dedicate this year to service. I've never been in the public sector. I've never worked in government, but my way of giving back is to work, to give back this year of my life, to be president of the National Bar, and last year as president-elect. And also, of course, I served and have been counsel for Reverend Jesse Jackson and Rainbow Push and the related organizations. That's my way of giving back in service, despite the fact that I've been in the private sector. So that's my journey as president of the National Bar Association, and I'm loving it. I had no idea that my year would be virtual and that we'd be plagued with literally one of the worst pandemics that this world has ever seen. But there you have it. And with every cloud comes sunlight, and there's always a silver lining in every cloud. And being virtual this year has enabled me to do so much more than I ever thought possible, because I don't have to travel as much as I envisioned doing as president of a national organization. I'm able to do unlimited Zoom calls, virtual meetings, all kinds of experiences that I've had, and being able to engage our membership much more because we're doing it virtually. There are only so many hours in a day, and when you have to be on a plane, fly somewhere, that takes up half of those hours in a day. I'm able to accomplish more in that day. It's exhausting, but nothing great is ever going to be easy, as you all know. So it's been a blessing of sorts, despite the fact that we're fighting, in my estimation, 3 pandemics simultaneously. And so I made, as a focal point of my administration, these 3 pandemics: COVID-19, election suppression, or if you will, voter suppression, and police brutality. So it's been a great journey.
CK, I'm really thankful to have you here and really excited to learn a little bit about your journey. But could you tell us a little more about the National Bar Association, its history, how it was created?
Absolutely.
Thank
Well,
you.
the National Bar Association is almost, like I said, 100 years old, maybe, and not maybe, but it's absolutely almost 100 years old. We're going to celebrate our 100th anniversary very soon in the next couple of years. The National Bar Association was created because, as you all probably know, African American lawyers historically could not, or were not allowed to become members of the American Bar Association and other bars. And so because of that, because of refusal, because of the exclusion, this is, of course, during segregation, where discrimination was at its highest, the National Bar Association was founded. It was an organization designed to allow African American and Black lawyers to congregate and to operate just in the same way as the American Bar Association and other bar associations existed. And it became that reservoir, that place where African American lawyers could congregate. And it was more than just sort of promoting CLEs, what we know now as CLEs. I think over 100 years ago, they probably called it something different. But legal education and networking, it was more than just that, because the experience of a Black lawyer at the turn of the century or during the 20s and the 30s and 40s is much different than today. There was a need for one place for them to share their experiences and to help each other. And it is out of that need that this extraordinary organization that now represents the interests of over 66,000 African-American lawyers, law professors, judges, and law students. So that's the history of the organization. Its richness emanates from the essence of its mission, which is to serve our communities. It's a social justice organization. So we believe that it doesn't matter if you're a commercial lawyer, if you're a civil rights lawyer, if you're a criminal defense lawyer, we all have a common thread and thrust and mission to service our communities. And that's what we do. So when I think about my year, which is defined by these three pandemics, COVID-19, voter suppression or election suppression, and police brutality, I chose those three areas to focus on because I believe they're the three pandemics that are plaguing our communities. COVID-19, we know that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted the African-American community and our membership as well. So as African-American lawyers who oftentimes are leaders in our community, it is our duty to help our community with the education on COVID, provide not just education, but provide also protective gear. We have, as a National Bar Association, immersed our community with protective gear in communities and underserved communities that don't have the luxury of just picking up protective gear wherever they go. We have also had programs in our community to enable disadvantaged students to have access to computers. You know, it's hard to have virtual learning when you don't have high-speed internet or a computer. And a lot of African-American students throughout the country and underserved communities don't have access to a computer. So we have programs where we were able to have computers, whether they were new or slightly used, imported into some of the most hard-hit cities in this country. And then we have formed a historic partnership with the National Medical Association, which is our counterpart in the medical industry, where they represent over 36,000 African-American doctors, where we were able to help educate our communities on COVID-19. You'd be surprised at the disinformation campaigns because there was no, as we know, national plan. It caused a lot of disinformation and consternation and difficulty in the African-American community. So that was an opportunity for African-American lawyers to play a significant role, which we have. So that's with COVID-19. We have task force. We have actually collaborative partnerships with so many of our partners at the National Bar, our sponsors, other bar associations, because we recognize more than many the need to help our communities deal with this, even when it comes to educating people on the vaccinations, on how they can have access to the vaccinations, on what it means. There's a lot of skepticism in the African American community about the COVID vaccination because we think of the history of how African Americans were used as guinea pigs in experiments. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment comes to mind. One of our past presidents, Fred Gray, the incredible Fred Gray, who was Dr. King's attorney, Rosa Parks' attorney, and the attorney for the victims of the syphilis experiment, he is still alive and well and a vibrant part of our organization. And so we, as a community, have had a history with vaccination, so there's a lot of skepticism. So African-American lawyers, African-American doctors can bridge the gap with our communities in helping to educate them on the positive aspects of taking the COVID vaccination and also on the cautions. And so that's a role that our lawyers have played. So in COVID-19, it's probably very more evident of the role we can play. When it comes to election suppression, voter suppression, the National Bar Association, particularly actually always has played a critical role in election protection, which is a nonpartisan effort that we have engaged in when we teamed up with the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights and other organizations such as the NAACP, the ACLU. We've always been a part of that effort. But this year, in the presidential elections and in the runoff elections, runoff Senate elections in Georgia, we played a critical role in availing ourselves of our lawyers and teaming up with other organizations such as the Divine Nine and other organizations in furnishing over 7,000 lawyers ready, willing, and able to fight voter suppression and to work in election protection. So, and teaming up with these organizations, we were able to be available. Fortunately, it was not necessary for us to engage in much proactive litigation in the election protection space, but we worked the hotlines. We were community leaders and informing our communities and helping to minimize voter suppression. Voter suppression was rampant during the presidential elections. We all saw it. It was particularly acute during the Georgia runoff election. It was the partnership with the lawyers, the ministry, and the grassroots organizations that made a difference. We saw this particularly in the Georgia runoff elections. There's so much disinformation. Voter suppression takes the form of, curtailing the amount of time that you have for early voting, closing polling stations, not allowing people to access in the regular hours, the polling stations. We saw a lot of intimidation at the polls. There were so many, there were probably 80 or 90 ways that we saw groups engaging in voter suppression, from the official groups managing the elections to the groups that were involved in voter suppression. So it was lawyers, such as the National Bar lawyers, that intervened and helped the communities to understand their rights, knowing their rights, knowing that it was their right to vote, ensuring that they were registered to vote. In Georgia, we saw almost 200,000 voters being improperly or illegally purged from the rolls. And that's a nonpartisan effort. Everybody should want to see people vote. It's not a partisan issue having the right to vote. Many people died, African Americans and others in this country, so that we might have the right to vote. So we feel that is our duty, again, as African American lawyers, to play a critical role throughout the country. And then the third bucket that we tackled and we're continuing to tackle is police brutality. If you look throughout the country at all the media on some of these significant cases that have been publicized, at George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the like, they are being led by National Bar Association lawyers, whether it's Ben Crump, who's a past president of the National Bar, Daryl Parks, also a past president of the National Bar, Lee Merritt, a very active member, Chris Stewart, who's a past president of one of our affiliate chapters at Gate City Bar in Atlanta, Georgia, Lanita Baker, who's currently a vice president of the National Bar Association. You name it, they are our members leading the way and making a difference throughout the country when it comes to police brutality. As an organization, we support them. We also have partnered and always been a partner with the Congressional Black Caucus. So when we see the drafting and the passage in Congress of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that's now pending in the Senate, and the voting rights bill, the Congressman Lewis's voting rights bill pending in the Senate, National Bar Association lawyers have always been available for consultation and review, and being there as experts when needed for the Congressional Black Caucus members. And have indeed, because of the fact that we are prosecuting these cases throughout the nation, have played a role in bringing about greater clarity to some of the issues that those who are involved in litigating these cases and pushing these cases have, because there's a direct tie between litigating and the legislation that's being proposed. But we don't stop just on a federal level. On the state level and in our local communities, we also are pushing for very, very progressive measures to turn the tide and have policing reform. That is what is necessary so we can stop the senseless killing at the hands of law enforcement. So those are the three buckets that we tackled. We are a social justice organization, and we've always been at the forefront of some of these, but in this year, in a COVID-filled environment, we felt it necessary to elevate our brand to ensure that we did our part in addressing these ills in our society.
CK, I'm sure a lot of the people watching, I'm impressed. I know Marty's impressed. It sounds like you guys did a ton this year, and it's really exciting stuff. What I think I'm wondering, and other people are wondering, as a young lawyer, how can you get involved with the NBA and on a local level feel that you're an integral part of your guys' efforts?
Absolutely. Well, you can go to www.nationalbar.org. So you can go to our website. You can join the National Bar Association. You can join our affiliate chapters. We have over 80 affiliate chapters throughout the nation. The three, for instance, here in the Atlanta metropolitan area. In Chicago, you've got the Cook County Bar Association, which is one of our oldest affiliate chapters in the country. A very, very robust bar association. They do a lot in the community. They always have. So if you're in the Chicago area, the Cook County Bar Association, and there's nothing like joining the organization. When you join the organization, if you want to be a part, it really just requires being interested, making yourself available, saying, I want to be part of social justice. I'm a commercial lawyer, for instance. I do corporate work, but I do feel that I'd love to be part of social justice. I'd love to be part of helping people understand their rights in voting. I'd love to be part of policing reform. I'd love to be able to to work on, in some part, legislation locally, be an influencer, and trying to bring about some change. It just requires joining the organizations, joining the affiliate chapters, and being dedicated to a mission. I would say pick one thing. There's always one thing that sparks an interest if you're a young lawyer. And you may not even know what that is. But if you join the National Bar Association, I can assure you, you will quickly learn because of the rich membership that would take you under their wing, to try to help you navigate to where you feel you can most be helpful. But it starts with joining the organization.
CK, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. We really appreciate it. Our members really appreciate it. It was awesome to hear what you guys are doing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.